The robbers thought there was only a fragile girl in the house. They were met by a 40-kilogram bodyguard. What could be quieter than a country house in a remote forest late at night? Only the footsteps of those who came to break the silence. An old Ford with no headlights slowly rolled down the gravel road, its engine having stalled 100 meters back. 3 people sat inside. At the wheel was Vict, with a predatory grin. Next to him, clutching a tablet, fidgeted Sergei Belov. The gadget's screen cast a greenish glare on his pale face. He was checking the alarm disabling diagram for the 100th time. In the back seat, Leonid Komarov, the youngest of them, cowered. He nervously fiddled with the edge of his sweatshirt and stared out the window at the dark, ominous pine trees. Before we continue, let us know what city you are from. We are interested to know where our videos are being watched. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave your rating. This motivates us to make new and interesting videos. Well, let's begin. All clear, Sergei hissed, turning off the tablet. The system is primitive. 5 minutes and the house is ours. Victor, nicknamed Bick, Bull, grunted approvingly. I told you it would be easy. There's only one girl there, a designer. She sits at her computer all day. She's as fragile as a porcelain doll. I've been watching her for a week. He turned his fleshy face toward the back seat. Kid, why are you so scared? This isn't stealing sunflower seeds from a kiosk. Today you'll become a man. Lenaya swallowed and tried to nod confidently, but it came out pitifully. He hadn't liked this idea from the start. The house stood too isolated, too close to the forest, which seemed alive and watching. Victor, are you sure there's no one else there? He squeezed out. I saw her cat, a big one, probably a Maine Coon. Buck dismissed him. What, scared of cats? Pull yourself together, you wimp. In an hour, we'll be out of here with our pockets full. The first raindrops began to fall on the roof of the car. A storm was brewing. Perfect cover. They got out of the car silently, like shadows. Sergei headed for the distribution board on the pole. A click of the wire cutters, and the house was plunged into complete darkness, cut off from the outside world. Victor was already standing at the back door leading to the terrace. The set of lockpicks in his skilled hands seemed like an extension of his fingers. A second, then another, a quiet click, and the lock gave way. The air inside the house was cool, smelling of wood and a wild, barely perceptible freshness. They went inside. Their plan was simple. Malloy would check the living room, Hacker would check the kitchen and utility rooms, and Beek would go to the study on the 2nd floor, where, according to their information, the safe was located. It should have taken no more than 20 minutes. That was their first and last mistake that night. On the 2nd floor, in her bedroom, Alina Sokolova was sleeping restlessly. Her work on a complex project had gone late, and she had fallen asleep fully clothed, leaning back against the pillows. The sound of the approaching storm did not disturb her. She was used to the sounds of nature. But there was another sound that her subconscious picked up through her sleep. A quiet creak on the floorboards downstairs, almost imperceptible, but unfamiliar. Next to the bed, on the carpet, the creature that Victor contemptuously called the cat raised its head. Its huge head with tufts on its ears turned toward the door. Its ears, like locators, picked up the anomaly in the familiar symphony of the nighttime house. It stood up, but not like a domestic cat, stretching and yawning. It rose in one smooth, predatory movement, shifting its weight onto its muscular paws. 40 kilograms of silent fury. His yellow eyes burned in the darkness with a primitive fire. He didn't make a sound. He just slipped out the door and began to descend the stairs, dissolving into the shadows. The hunter had entered his territory. Downstairs, the robbers were working by the light of dim flashlights. Lenia Maley entered the spacious living room. Moonlight streaming through the huge window cast strange patterns on the floor. He nervously swept the beam of his flashlight over the furniture, walls, and empty corners. His heart was pounding in his throat. He felt like he was being watched. He spun around abruptly. No one was there. It was just his imagination. He took another step toward the center of the room, trying to be as quiet as possible. Suddenly, he froze. He heard something, or rather, he felt it. A low-frequency vibration that ran across the floor and reverberated in the soles of his sneakers. He pointed the flashlight under a large coffee table, and he saw them, 2 glowing yellow eyes. They did not reflect the light. They were the source of the light, an icy, inhuman source. Leonya froze, unable to move. It wasn't a Maine Coon. No Maine Coon in the world could be that big. The shadow under the table was too massive, too dense. A sound came from the darkness that made Leonya's blood run cold. A low guttural growl, like the grinding of stones. He backed away, stumbling over the carpet. The flashlight fell from his trembling hand and rolled across the floor, revealing details from the darkness. A huge paw with retracted claws, a spotted side, tufts of fur on the ears. "Vitya," he whispered, but his voice failed him. He turned to run. At that moment, the shadow lunged forward. It didn't look like an attack. It was a predator's lunge, honed by thousands of years of evolution. Silent, lightning fast, deadly. Lenia didn't even have time to scream. Something incredibly heavy and strong knocked him off his feet. He collapsed to the floor, hitting his head. The air rushed out of his lungs with a gasp. A huge carcass loomed over him. He felt hot breath on his face, smelling of raw meat. A massive paw came down on his chest, and sharp claws dug slightly into the fabric of his sweatshirt, pinning him to the floor. He looked up and met the gaze of a wild beast, a lynx, a real, huge forest lynx. It didn't growl. It just stared at him. And there was no malice in that gaze. There was only a cold warning. Then the beast raised its head and let out a blood-curdling scream, a hissing cry that turned into a roar, echoing throughout the house and drowning out the sound of the storm. That cry said it all: rage, threat, and assertion of its right to this territory. In the study on the second floor, Victor Bick froze when he heard the sound. It was not a human cry, and it was definitely not a cat's cry. It was a cry that would have silenced the entire forest. He grabbed his gun. Sergei ran out of the kitchen, his face contorted with horror. "What was that?" he shouted. "Kid!" Victor barked and rushed into the living room. What they saw in the light of their flashlights made them freeze in their tracks. Their accomplice was lying on the floor, and standing over him, like a sculpture carved from primitive stone, was a beast from a nightmare. It slowly turned its head toward them, and its yellow eyes fixed on Victor. Shock. The first reaction was shock. For a second, 2, 3, the robbers just stood there, unable to comprehend the surreal nature of the scene. Sergei Hacker Belov, whose brain was used to working with understandable codes and algorithms, was the first to snap out of his stupor. His face was contorted with animal terror. "It's a lynx. Bull, it's a real lynx. Let's get out of here. To hell with the money," he hissed, retreating toward the exit. But Viktor Gromov didn't move. The shock in his eyes quickly gave way to something else. The excitement of a predator who had found a worthy opponent. In the army, he had been taught to suppress fear and turn it into rage. "Freeze!" he barked at Sergei, who froze in place, The pistol in his hand seemed like a natural extension of his fist. Some lousy cat isn't going to kick us out of this house. I'll calm him down right now. Slowly, without taking his eyes off the beast's yellow eyes, he began to move deeper into the room, coming in from the side. Lux, keeping his eyes on him, let out a low, vibrating growl, like the sound of a running engine. He didn't let go of Liony, but his whole body tensed, ready to pounce. Liony whimpered quietly beneath him, too afraid and in too much pain to move. On the second floor, Alina Sokolova sat on the bed, covering her mouth with her hand to keep from screaming. A dull thud, an animalistic scream, men's cries, all mixed together into one nightmarish sound that woke her up and instantly took her back to that dark night in the city alley. The icy fingers of fear, which she had tried so hard to warm in the solitude of this house, squeezed her heart again. Panic threatened to overwhelm her. She could already feel her limbs going numb, her breathing becoming difficult. But through the fog of terror, one clear, burning thought broke through. Lux. He's there. He's in danger. That thought became her lifeline. Her fear for him was stronger than her own. She slid out of bed, trying not to make a sound. Grabbing her smartphone from the nightstand, she tiptoed into the closet and closed the door tightly behind her. Her fingers trembled so much that it took her 3 attempts to dial the emergency number. Hello, police. Someone's broken into my house. I'm in the village of Sosnovi Bor on Lesnaya Street, number 17. They're armed. Please hurry, she whispered into the receiver, trying not to let her voice shake. Miss, stay on the line. Don't hang up, replied the dispatcher's calm voice. Are you alone in the house? Alina bit her lip. No. With me? My bodyguard. Downstairs, the situation was heating up. Victor took another step forward. Sergei, go around him on the right. I'll distract him, he commanded. I'm not going near that monster, Hacker screamed. Do as I say, or I'll deal with you personally, growled Bull, without turning around. That moment was enough. Lux, realizing that the main threat came from the man with the gun, quickly removed his paw from Lenya's chest and darted to the side like lightning. But not toward Victor. He jumped onto a tall bookcase and was up under the ceiling in the blink of an eye. From there, 2 burning coals stared down at them from the darkness. Lenya, now free, immediately crawled into a corner and covered his head with his hands. Victor spun around, trying to catch the beast in his sights. But it was too fast. Sergei, seeing the lynx's maneuver, finally lost his composure and rushed to the exit. But the terrace door was jammed. He frantically pulled the handle. It won't open. The storm seemed to have reached its peak. A flash of lightning lit up the room for a second, revealing the figures frozen in bizarre poses. The terrified hacker at the door, the whimpering teenager in the corner, and the former soldier aiming at the darkness under the ceiling. And at that moment, Lux attacked. He didn't jump on Victor from above. That would have been too predictable. Instead, he leaped to the opposite side of the wardrobe, landing behind the robber. Before the bull could turn around, the lynx lunged at his legs. It wasn't a bite, but a blow with his entire body. Victor lost his balance and, falling, hit his shoulder against the doorframe. The gun fell from his weakened hand and rolled under the sofa with a thud. Lux didn't wait. He immediately sank his teeth into Victor's leg. Sharp fangs tore through the denim and the flesh beneath it. Victor roared in pain and rage, trying to push the beast away. He kicked it with his free leg, but the lynx held on with a death grip. 300 meters from Alina's house, Ivan Petrovich Reshetnikov woke up to the sound of thunder that seemed to shake his small house to its foundations. He got up to drink some water and checked that the windows were closed tightly. Standing in the kitchen, he looked toward his neighbor's house. Usually, a nightlight was on there, but now the house was plunged into complete darkness. Strange. Power outages during thunderstorms were common, but something made him wary. He listened. Through the sound of the rain, he heard a strange noise, a scream, inhuman, full of pain and rage, and then another, definitely human. A former forester, Ivan Petrovich knew all the sounds of this forest, and what he heard was unlike anything he had ever heard before. The old man's heart skipped a beat. He went to the phone. There was no dial tone. The storm had cut the line. Without a moment's hesitation, he threw on an old jacket, grabbed a powerful flashlight from the shelf, and his cell phone, which he kept charged just in case. Stepping out onto the porch, he dialed 112. "This is the emergency services. This is Reshetnikov, Sosnovy Bor, Lesnaya Street, house number 19. Something is happening at my neighbor's house, number 17. There are screams and sounds of a struggle. Their lights are off, and the phone isn't answering." Alina heard everything from the dressing room. Victor's roar, Lux's growl, Sergei's panicked screams. She knew that Lux was injured, or could be injured at any moment. The police were on their way, but how long would it take? 10 minutes? 15? Irreparable damage could be done in that time. She had to do something. Right now. Her gaze fell on her work tablet lying on the shelf. The idea came to her suddenly, sharp and clear. Smart home. She had set up the system herself. Lighting, sound, locks, everything was controlled by a single app. With trembling fingers, she unlocked the tablet. She found the app icon. Her finger hovered over the panic button. She never thought she'd have to use it. She pressed it, and in that instant, the house went crazy. Lights began flashing at breakneck speed throughout the first floor, turning the room into a hellish strobe. At the same time, Wagner's Ride of the Valkyries blared at full volume from all the speakers built into the ceiling. For the robbers, this was the last straw. The blinding flashes of light, the deafening music, the leader roaring in pain as he tried to fight off the lynx. It all turned into a surreal nightmare. Sergei screamed and huddled in a corner, covering his ears. Lenaya just lay on the floor, unable to think straight. Victor was momentarily confused. Disoriented by the light and sound, he loosened his grip. Lux, sensing this, unclenched his jaw and jumped back into the shadows. He was limping on one leg. The blow with the boot had hit his joint. Victor staggered to his feet. Blood was flowing down his leg. Pure hatred flashed in his eyes. He looked around for the gun. A flash of light caught the glint of blackened steel under the sofa. He rushed toward it. Grabbing the weapon, he spun around. In the chaos of flashing lights, he saw the silhouette of a beast crouched on the floor by the stairs. Lux was trapped. On one side was a wounded and enraged man with a gun. On the other was the staircase leading upstairs to the woman he was supposed to protect. Victor raised the gun. His hand did not tremble. Through the roar of the music, he growled, "That's it, kitty. You've had your fun." A deafening shot rang out, momentarily drowning out the music and the rumbling thunder. The bullet passed inches from Lux's head. With a deafening clang, it crashed into a large mirror on the wall, showering the floor with sharp shards. For a moment, everything froze. Even the Ride of the Valkyries seemed quieter than that piercing sound. Lux, pressed against the floor, let out a low hiss. He wasn't hit by the bullet, but a shard of mirror had scratched his shoulder. Viktor Gromov cursed loudly. The flashing light made it almost impossible to aim. Rage clouded his eyes. He, a combat officer, couldn't hit a stationary target. That thought was more humiliating to him than the wound on his leg. "Hacker, knock out the shield in the house. In the hallway, damn it, find it!" he yelled, drowning out the music. But Sergei Belov was no longer listening to him. The shot was the point of no return for him. He saw the bullet narrowly miss the beast and realized that Victor had gone mad. He wouldn't stop until he killed the lynx, and then, possibly, all of them. Despair gave him strength. He no longer thought about money. All he could think about was how to get out of this hell. In the dressing room, Alina heard a shot, and her world collapsed. Her ears rang. Lux. They shot Lux. The image of his lifeless body lying below flashed in her mind, burning out all other thoughts. The panic receded, replaced by an icy, all-consuming rage she had never felt before in her life. They had come to her home. They had attacked her only friend, her protector. She was no longer a victim. She was now an avenger. The phone fell from her hands, but the connection with the dispatcher remained. "Girl, what's going on? I heard a gunshot," the voice shouted from the speaker. But Alina didn't hear it. She looked around the dressing room. Her gaze stopped on a heavy metal safe bolted to the floor in the corner. It was empty. She kept her documents in a bank. But the robbers didn't know that. Next to it stood an old, heavy floor vase that she had been planning to throw away. The idea came from pure anger. Downstairs, Sergei, ignoring Victor's orders, rushed to the large window in the living room. He grabbed a bronze statuette from the mantelpiece and swung it at the glass. The double-glazed window cracked but did not break. Sergei struck again and again. Victor, seeing this betrayal, flew into an even greater rage. "Where are you going, you rat?" he roared, turning toward him. And that moment became fatal for him. Lux, taking advantage of his archenemy's distraction, lunged forward. He rushed past Victor, ignoring him, and slammed into Sergei, who was swinging for a third blow. The hacker flew away from the window like a bowling pin. The lynx did not bite him. She simply pinned him to the floor, standing over him and letting out a menacing growl right in his face. Sergei went limp, his eyes rolled back. He lost consciousness from sheer terror. At the same time, Lenia Malloy, seeing that the leader was distracted and his second accomplice neutralized, made the only decision he could. He jumped to his feet and, without looking where he was going, rushed to the exit to the terrace. He threw himself against the jammed door with all his weight. Adrenaline and fear awakened superhuman strength in him. The door gave way with a crash, and he tumbled out into the pouring rain. Victor was alone. Alone against the flashing lights, deafening music, and a wounded, enraged beast. He raised the gun again, aiming at the lynx standing over Sergei's body. At that moment, there was a deafening crash from above. Alina had gathered all her strength and knocked over a heavy floor vase. The sound of breaking ceramics on the second floor was louder than a gunshot. For Victor, it was like a switch had been flipped in his head. The lights, the music, and now the noise upstairs. This was no accident. This was no system malfunction. It was her, the girl, the porcelain doll. She wasn't just hiding. She was taunting him. She was controlling this chaos. All his rage, all his fear, all his wounded pride instantly shifted from the animal to a new target. He slowly lowered the gun. The beast was just a tool. The real enemy was sitting upstairs. Ivan Petrovich was already approaching the border of Alina's property. Through the veil of rain, he saw something incredible. The house was flashing like a Christmas tree, and the sounds of classical music mixed with thunder could be heard coming from inside. Suddenly, the back door flew open, and a figure jumped out, stumbling and running toward the forest. Ivan Petrovich aimed his powerful flashlight at it. It was a young man, completely crazed with fear. The old man realized that the police would be here any minute, and his task was to prevent the figure from escaping. "Stop, I'll shoot," he shouted in a voice hardened by decades of work in the forest. Lyonya, blinded by the light and frightened by the shout, stumbled and fell into the mud. He couldn't see who was shouting, but it seemed to him that the house was surrounded. He gave up. He just lay there and cried, smearing mud across his face. A strange, ringing silence fell over the house. The music suddenly stopped. Alina, in a fit of rage, knocked over a vase and pulled the power cord for the audio system out of the socket in her room. The flashing light also stopped. Apparently, the system had malfunctioned due to overload. Now the house was lit only by rare flashes of lightning. Victor stood in the middle of the living room, breathing heavily. His leg was burning. Sergei lay unconscious nearby. The lynx, breathing heavily and limping, moved away from him and stood at the foot of the stairs, blocking the way upstairs. She looked at Victor, and her gaze revealed not rage, but deadly fatigue and determination. Victor looked at the beast. Then he slowly raised his head and stared at the ceiling, where the rumbling was coming from. A sinister, crooked grin appeared on his broken lips. "So you're smart, are you?" he croaked. He had forgotten about the money. He forgot about the safe. He had a new goal: to prove to this girl who was really the boss here. Slowly, dragging his wounded leg, he moved toward the stairs. His gaze was fixed on the top landing. The hunt for the beast was over. The hunt for the man had begun. The silence that replaced the deafening chaos was even more terrifying. It was thick, viscous, filled with unspoken threats. Each flash of lightning illuminated the scene, frozen like a photograph. Viktor Gromov at the foot of the stairs, his face a mask of dirt, sweat, and blood. And Lux, standing on the third step, clinging to the floor. His body was tense to the limit, a low, guttural growl escaping from his chest. He was wounded, he was tired, but he was a guard, and he had no intention of giving way. Victor took the first step onto the staircase. The wooden step creaked piercingly, and the sound seemed louder than a gunshot. Lux lunged forward in response, his teeth clicking in the air. He didn't reach Victor, but it was a clear warning. "Get out of here, you bastard," Bull hissed. He wasn't afraid. Rage had replaced all other feelings. He took another step, leaning on the railing to take the weight off his wounded leg. Upstairs, Alina heard the creak. She understood his intentions. He was coming for her. Her refuge, her fortress, was about to fall. She jumped out of the dressing room and frantically scanned her bedroom. Her gaze fell on a massive oak chest of drawers standing against the wall. It was heavy, immovable, perfect. Adrenaline gave her strength she didn't know she had. With her shoulder braced against it, she began to push it toward the door. The legs of the chest scraped the parquet floor with a nasty screech. Every inch was an incredible struggle. Below, Victor was already climbing the stairs, step by step. Lux didn't dare to attack directly. He circled around him like a wolf, sometimes running ahead, sometimes trying to grab his injured leg. Victor waved his gun like a club, not trying to shoot. He didn't want to waste bullets and risk missing in the movement. "I'm coming for you, Mouse," he shouted upstairs, his voice distorted with pain and rage, making Alina flinch. "You thought you were so smart? You thought you could hide behind your cat?" The creaking of the dresser was his best guide. He smiled. "She's afraid. She's building barricades. That's good." He had almost reached the top of the stairs when Lux made one last desperate attempt. He jumped not at Victor, but at the railing next to him, trying to knock him off his feet with his weight. Victor had been expecting this. He thrust his elbow out sharply, hitting Lux in the side. Lux lost his balance and fell with a dull thud onto the staircase, freezing for a few seconds, stunned. The way was clear. Victor limped up to the second-floor landing and saw the bedroom door, almost blocked by a heavy chest of drawers. Only a narrow gap remained. He heard Alina on the other side, trying to push it all the way shut. "It's too late, doll," he growled. He braced his shoulder against the edge of the chest of drawers and began to push. It was a battle of pure strength. On one side was a man weighing nearly 200 pounds, mad with rage and pain. On the other, a fragile girl working at the limit of her abilities. The chest of drawers slowly, inch by inch, crept back, opening the passage. Alina pushed with all her might, her muscles burning, but she knew she was losing. And at that moment, through the noise of the struggle and the rumbling thunder, a new sound reached her ears. Distant, but unmistakable. The wail of a siren? The police. Ivan Petrovich had done his job. The siren grew louder and louder. For Alina, it was the sound of hope. For Victor, it was the sound of a timer counting down the last seconds. He realized he had no time left. There was no way to escape. But he couldn't leave as a loser. He had to finish what he started. With a wild roar, he threw himself against the dresser with all his weight. The wood creaked. Alina couldn't hold on and flew back, falling to the floor. Victor squeezed through the opening. He stood in the doorway of her bedroom, huge, wounded, covered in blood and dirt, with a gun in his hand. His heavy breathing filled the room. Alina sat on the floor, crawling backward until her back hit the wall. She was trapped. Her eyes reflected primal terror. It was a repeat of that very nightmare. A dead end. A predator. And she was the prey. "Well, designer?" he breathed, taking a step toward her. "Finished playing?" The siren was wailing very close, it seemed, right under the windows. But Victor didn't care. The whole world had shrunk to this room, to this girl, in whose eyes he wanted to see his triumph. Lux, coming to his senses, ran up the stairs with a growl, but stopped at the door when he saw that his mistress was in the line of fire. He couldn't risk it. Victor slowly raised the gun, pointing it at Alina. He wasn't going to shoot right away. He wanted to enjoy the moment. He wanted to see her break. "Beg for mercy," he croaked. But Alina was silent. Her gaze, full of horror, suddenly changed. The fear was still there, but something else had come over her. A cold, ringing determination. She wasn't looking at him, but behind him. Victor frowned, confused. He took another step, and then Alina spoke her first words in all that time. In a quiet but clear voice. "Lux, vas." It was a code word, a command she had taught him when he was a kitten, playing with him, a command she never thought she would use in real life. For Lux, it was a signal. Don't defend, don't warn, attack, to destroy. Before Victor could even comprehend what was happening, a 40-kilogram lynx let out a battle cry and leaped. But not at him. Lux jumped onto the wall next to the door, pushed off, and in midair, with all his weight, crashed into Victor's back, aiming for his neck. Victor Gromov didn't even have time to turn around. The blow was like a battering ram. 40 kilograms of muscle and fury, reinforced by gravity and speed, crashed into him between his shoulder blades. He collapsed to the floor as if he had been knocked down, dropping his gun, which rolled into the corner with a clatter. His head hit the parquet floor, and for a moment, the world went black. But the pain immediately brought him back to reality. Sharp fangs dug into his shoulder at the base of his neck, tearing his muscles. It wasn't the same grip as on his leg. It was a predator's bite, aimed at immobilizing and killing. Victor growled, trying to throw the beast off him, but Lux clung on with a death grip. His hind legs, with claws extended, streaked the man's back and sides, tearing his jacket and the flesh beneath it to shreds. This was no longer a fight. It was an execution. At that moment, the front door flew off its hinges under the impact of a battering ram. "Police! Everyone on the floor! Hands behind your heads!" Loud shouts rang out. 2 fully equipped Special Forces soldiers burst into the house, followed by a local police officer with his gun at the ready. For a second they froze, stunned by what they saw. The living room was destroyed. A body lay unconscious by the broken window. And the scene in the bedroom, illuminated by their powerful flashlights. A huge bloodied lynx was tormenting a man lying on the floor, and in the corner, pale as a sheet, sat a girl. Victor, seeing the police, gathered his remaining strength. "Take her off me," he croaked. One of the Special Forces soldiers had already raised his automatic rifle, aiming at the beast. "Don't shoot!" Alina shouted. Her voice sounded surprisingly firm. She stood up. "Lux, come to me! Fu, come to me!" Rice, hearing his mistress's command, opened his jaws. The beast was breathing heavily, blood dripping from his fangs, both his own and Alina's. He looked at Victor, then at Alina. Taking a step back, he slowly limped away from his defeated enemy and sat down next to Alina, pressing himself against her leg. His body trembled with tension and exhaustion. The police immediately rushed to Victor, handcuffing him and calling an ambulance. The second fighter kept his gun aimed at Lux, never taking his eyes off him. "Girl, slowly move away from the animal," he commanded. "He won't hurt you," Alina replied quietly, stroking the lynx's head. "He was protecting me." An hour later, the house was full of people. Police, forensic experts, medics. Victor, bandaged and under guard, was taken to the hospital. His wounds were serious, but his life was not in danger. Sergei Belov, who had regained consciousness, and Leonid Komarov, whom Ivan Petrovich had found at the site, were questioned in different rooms. Both of them, broken and frightened, poured out everything they knew, talking excitedly about the 40-kilogram monster. Ivan Petrovich gave his statement to the local police officer, glancing anxiously and respectfully at Alina from time to time. Alina herself, wrapped in a blanket, sat in the kitchen. Next to her, a veterinarian called by the police treated Lux's wounds, a deep cut on his shoulder and a severe bruise on his paw. The lynx patiently endured all the procedures, never taking his eyes off his owner. When the veterinarian finished, he said, "He was lucky. He's a strong animal, a real fighter." Alina provided all of Lux's documents confirming his legal origin and care. The local police officer looked at the papers and inspected the house, then shook his head. "I've been in the force for 20 years, he said. "I've never seen anything like this. According to the law, it was self-defense and protection of private property. I have no questions for you or your bodyguard." The story of the nighttime intrusion and the lynx defender became a local legend. Newspapers and news sites were full of headlines. Alina was left alone for a while, with a police patrol posted outside her house. But the most important change took place inside her. That night, after giving the command "attack," she overcame her fear. The nightmare that had haunted her did not disappear, but it no longer had power over her. She faced the threat head-on, fought back, and won. She regained her home, her life, and her peace of mind. The robbers got what they deserved. Viktor Gromov was sent to prison for a long time. Sergei and Lenia, thanks to their cooperation with the investigation, received shorter but still real sentences. A week passed. The hot July afternoon flooded the terrace with light. Alina sat in an armchair with her laptop and worked. The broken window had been replaced, and the house was once again clean and tidy. Next to her chair, on the warm floorboards, lay Lux. His wounds were healing. He squinted lazily at the sun, and only a slight limp reminded him of the events of that night. Alina lowered her hand and scratched him behind the ear with a brush. He responded with a loud purr, a sound like the rumble of a small motor. She looked at him, then at the peaceful, sun-drenched forest. For the first time in many years, she felt more than just safe. She felt at home, under the protection of her loyal, silent 170-pound bodyguard. Who showed more cruelty in this story? Victor, who came with a gun, or Alina, who gave the command, "Fas"?